Right now, as you're watching this, the US government is pulling off the greatest financial magic trick in human history. They're making $38 trillion disappear, and the wildest part, you're the one paying for it. You just don't know it yet. Look, I get it. When you hear national debt, your eyes glaze over. It sounds like some abstract number that economists argue about on cable news. But here's what changed in 2024 that nobody's talking about. For the first time ever, the government is spending more money on interest payments for old debt than on the entire military. More than Medicare, more than keeping the lights on. We've crossed a threshold that makes every traditional solution completely impossible, and what they're doing instead is so clever, so quietly devastating, that by the time most people realize what happened, it'll be too late. I used to think the debt was just a political talking point. You know, Republicans freak out when Democrats spend. Democrats freak out when Republicans spend. And nothing ever actually matters. Then I started looking at the actual mechanics of what's happening right now. And honestly, it kept me up at night because this isn't about politics anymore. This is about math. And the math has turned predatory. Here's the thing about owing $38 trillion. You can't just cut your way out of it. You can't tax your way out of it. And you definitely can't default your way out of it. So what do? You get creative. You use a strategy so old that it dates back to the Roman Empire, but so effective that every major government in history has eventually turned to it. You pay back every single dollar you owe, but you change what a dollar is worth. Think about it like this. Imagine you borrowed $100,000 from your buddy to buy a house. You promised to pay him back in 10 years. But here's the twist. Over those 10 years, you quietly convince everyone in town that the currency you're using is now worth half as much. When you finally hand your buddy that $100,000, technically you kept your promise. You paid him back, but that money now buys what $50,000 used to buy. You didn't refuse to pay. You just changed the value of payment itself. That's exactly what's happening right now, except instead of your buddy, it's every American with a savings account, a pension, or a retirement fund. And instead of being upfront about it, they've built an entire system of technical jargon and bureaucratic machinery to hide what is really going on. The government calls this managing inflation expectations or accommodative monetary policy. But let's call it what it really is. A soft default, a polite robbery, a quiet transfer of wealth from your pocket to theirs, disguised as economic policy. Now here's where this gets really interesting, because they're not just winging this. They're following a playbook. After World War II, the US had a debt-to-GDP ratio of 119%. That's massive, unsustainable, the kind of number that should have crushed the economy. But it didn't. By the 1980s, that ratio had dropped dramatically. How? Did we cut spending? No. Did we raise taxes through the roof? Not really. Here's what actually happened. For decades, the Federal Reserve kept interest rates artificially low, around 0.5%, while inflation ran at about 6% every single year. Anyone holding government bonds lost 3.5% of their purchasing power. It was a slow, systematic transfer of wealth from savers to the state. Your grandparents who saved in bonds to fund their retirement, they paid off the war debt. Not through taxes, through the invisible tax of inflation. And now, in 2025, that same playbook is back. But this time, they've upgraded it with 3 tools that are so sophisticated, most people won't realize they're being used until the damage is done. Tool number 1 is what I call the captive buyer system. In a normal world, if you're $38 trillion in debt and spending like there's no tomorrow, investors would demand higher interest rates. They'd say, "You're risky, pay me more." But the government can't afford to pay more, so they rig the game through banking regulations with names like Basel III and Dodd-Frank. They force banks, insurance companies, and pension funds to buy treasury bonds whether they want to or not. These institutions legally have to hold these bonds to stay in business. It doesn't matter if the returns are terrible. It doesn't matter if they're losing money. The law says buy them or shut down. Your pension fund isn't buying government debt because it's a smart investment. It's buying it because refusing to do so is illegal. Tool number 2 is even more clever. It's the manipulation of how we measure inflation itself. See, Social Security payments and certain treasury bonds are tied to something called the Consumer Price Index. If the CPI says inflation is 10%, the government has to pay out 10% more. So guess what they did? They changed how they calculated. They introduced something called substitution bias. The logic goes like this. If steak gets too expensive, you'll buy hamburger instead, right? So technically, your cost of living didn't go up as much because you can substitute cheaper options. Never mind that your quality of life just dropped. Never mind that you used to afford steak and now you can't. The CPI tracks the hamburger and calls it a win. They also use hedonic adjustments. If a new car costs $5,000 more than last year's model but has a backup camera, they argue the price didn't really increase because you're getting more value. These statistical tricks save the government billions every year. If we use the 1980 methodology to calculate inflation today, the official number would consistently be double what they're telling you. They're literally redefining reality to pay you less. But here's where it gets truly wild. Tool number 3 is what economists call fiscal dominance. For decades, the Federal Reserve was supposed to be independent. Its job was to protect the value of the dollar, even if that meant raising interest rates so high it caused a recession. But when your debt hits $38 trillion, that independence becomes a luxury you can't afford. If the Fed raised rates to 10% like they did in the 1980s, the interest payments alone would be $3.8 trillion a year. That's more than all the tax revenue the government collects. The entire system would collapse overnight. So the Fed is trapped. They have to keep rates lower than they should be. They have to tolerate higher inflation. They've become an enabler of treasury spending, and their independence is quietly dying. When foreign countries like China and Japan started selling off their treasury holdings, who stepped in to buy? The Fed. They printed money to purchase the debt that nobody else wanted. This is quantitative easing, and it's exactly what it sounds like, creating dollars out of thin air to keep the government solvent. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but if everyone's getting hurt by inflation, doesn't that mean we're all in this together? And that's where the really dark part comes in. Because we're not all in this together, not even close. There's this concept from an 18th century economist named Richard Cantillon. He noticed something crucial. Where new money enters the economy determines who wins and who loses. When the Fed prints $1 trillion, they don't mail you a check. They don't drop it from helicopters over Main Street. They inject it into the financial sector. Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, BlackRock. These institutions get the fresh money first, at zero interest, and they immediately use it to buy assets, stocks, real estate, businesses. By the time that money trickles down to you in the form of wages or a small raise, prices have already gone up. The rich get the money before inflation hits. You get it after. This is why, since 2008, we've watched wealth inequality explode. The people who own assets have seen their net worth skyrocket because the Fed is pumping up the value of everything they hold. Meanwhile, people who live on wages have watched their purchasing power collapse because their paychecks can't keep up with rent and groceries. The national debt is being paid off by liquidating the middle class. That's not hyperbole. That's the mechanism. And here's what this means for you. For the last 40 years, the standard advice was simple: work hard, save money, buy some bonds, maybe a house, and you'll be fine. That was the dream, right? The safe path to a comfortable retirement. But that advice was built for a world where money held its value. We're not in that world anymore. If you save cash, you're guaranteed to lose purchasing power. If you buy government bonds, you're guaranteed to lose purchasing power. We've entered what I call the era of forced speculation, to simply preserve what you have. You now have to take risks. You have to buy stocks, real estate, maybe crypto, just to outrun the devaluation. The government has turned the entire economy into a casino where you must gamble to survive. because the safe option saving has been weaponized against you. But wait, there's one more tool they haven't deployed yet, and this one's the final boss. Right now, physical cash is the last escape hatch if the government pushes too hard. If inflation gets too obvious, you can pull your money out of the bank and stuff it under your mattress. It's not a great option, but it's an option. Cash gives you the ability to exit the system. The government knows this, and they're building something to eliminate the exit forever. It's called a central bank digital currency, or CBDC. If the dollar becomes purely digital, controlled entirely through the Federal Reserve System, they gain total control. They can implement negative interest rates instantly. Imagine waking up to find that 1% of your bank balance was automatically deducted to encourage spending. They can put expiration dates on money. Your stimulus check might come with a timer. Spend it in 30 days or it vanishes. This isn't science fiction. China's already testing this with a digital yuan, and the infrastructure for a digital dollar is being built right now. Think about what this means. No cash, no escape valve. The government can see every transaction, control every dollar, and adjust the rules in real time through software updates. It has the ultimate solution to the debt crisis because it gives them the power to micromanage your financial life with a few lines of code. So here's the bottom line, and I want you to really hear this. The United States is defaulting on. It's dead. It's just doing it slowly, politely, bureaucratically. That $38 trillion will never be paid back in real terms. The plan is to let inflation run hot for the next decade, maybe longer. Erasing the debt by erasing the value of the currency. The winners in this system are people who own scarce assets, real estate, businesses, things that can't be printed. The losers are people who trust the system, who keep their money in savings accounts, who believe that working hard and playing by the rules will be enough. The American dream of saving your way to prosperity, it's dead. We're in the asset survival era now, and the rules have fundamentally changed. The question isn't whether this is going to happen. It's already happening. The question is whether you're going to adapt before it's too late. If this opened your eyes to something you hadn't seen before, do me a favor. Smash the like button so this reaches more people who need to understand what's really going on. Subscribe because we're going to keep digging into the financial mechanisms that nobody wants you to understand. And drop a comment telling me what you're doing to protect yourself in this new reality. Are you buying assets? Going all in on cash? Or do you think I'm completely wrong about all of this? Because here's the thing. Once you see the machine, you can't unsee it. And what you do next might be the most important financial decision of your life. I'll see you in the next one.